What's going on, everybody? Scott Bogman here for BettingPros to give you my favorite picks and props for Week 14, the final week of the college football regular season. A little bit early this week. Looking back at last week, 3-4 on the picks, 2-1 on the touchdowns, and 6-4 on the props. So overall winning week. That Rice game, man, that's the one that got me. I didn't get Rice. I didn't get the under on that, and that's the one that got me for the pick. So remember, if you want to tail me, if you like my bets or you want to fade them either way, I understand. You can do that on the BettingPros app or at bettingpros.com/Bogman, Bogman. That is where you can find me. Let's get into the picks for this week. I have 5 for you here. Let's go first to Mississippi State at Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. I'm going to take the 26.5 if that's what they're going to give us for Mississippi State. And I think this line would probably be, I think this line is right. Mississippi State is not good. Ole Miss is good, but they're coming off a bad loss. This is a rivalry game that always plays closer than this in the Egg Bowl. We haven't seen margin of this level since 2018, and that was with Mississippi State winning 35-3. And Ole Miss hasn't put this type of a beat down on Mississippi State since 2008. So this plays traditionally a little bit closer, and Mississippi State has against the spread victories against Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Tennessee this year, and their offense is around middle of the pack. I think that's really what gets it done. The loss to Florida also seemed to really be just crushing for Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin looked like he was going to cry in the press conference, and we've seen one loss turn into 2 losses for teams this year. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. I do think Ole Miss still wins, and probably by 14, maybe even 21, but 3 touchdowns. We're still hitting this prop or this pick because it's 26.5 points. So Mississippi State, only loss of this margin was to Arkansas. Arkansas forced 5 turnovers, but what they typically do, and I watched this, all game against Texas, and I've seen them do it against other teams, is they just slow it down. When they're playing a team that they know is going to be very tough, they slow the pace of the game down and don't want to give that offense the ball. So I think we're going to see more of that from Mississippi State, and the margin is so big here. It's plus 26.5. We're going to take that. We're also going to take points for South Carolina at Clemson in the Palmetto Bowl. This is just a simple formula of South Carolina is playing their best football, and Clemson is not playing their best football. And Clemson has hit bumps against the hardest teams they played. Georgia, Louisville, they lost those games. They should have lost to Pitt as well. If it wasn't for that Cade Klubnik crazy run at the end, they would have been going into overtime, and that game would have played a lot closer. And we've just seen South Carolina play some good football. And the quarterback, LaNorris Sellers, he switched to contacts at some point. He's had his best 2 games or his last 2 against Wofford, 23 of 27, 307 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And then against Missouri, 323 yards on 21 of 30 passing, 5 touchdowns and a pick. So I think that is a major contributing factor to why I like South Carolina here. And also, Clemson offensive line has had issues with injuries, and this defensive line for South Carolina is one of the best in the nation. Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, the true freshmen, have been crazy. Kennard's going to be a high NFL draft pick. Dylan Stewart was a 5-star prospect. This defensive line is really, really good. The only thing Clemson really has going for them is that they're playing at home. So it's a tough game, rivalry game here. It should be a close one, which is why the spread is only 2.5 points. But I like South Carolina on the money line, so I'll go ahead and take them. Let's go to Kansas minus 1.5 at Baylor. Look, sometimes you just have to see a team that is streaking. I let them get me last week because I picked Colorado. I picked the over in that game. They held Colorado. But for me, it's just we're laying the points. We're taking Kansas right now. It's at Baylor, and Baylor's been good. They're on a nice little win streak, too. But they've clinched a spot in the bowl game. Baylor has beaten teams by scoring. Houston was able to hold them down to 20 points, though, and drag them in the mud a little bit. And these are probably 2 of the hottest teams in the Big 12, but no one is hotter than Kansas right now. Devin Neal scored a bunch of times last week. This should be one of the higher scoring games of this week because Baylor's been playing hot on offense. Kansas has been playing hot on offense, but I'm going to take the Jayhawks and lay the points. This has bit me before, so we're going to follow the trend, and Kansas is winning. They have to win this game to get to a bowl game. It's a little more on the line for them as well. So I think we're going to see, just more of the same of what we've seen from Kansas. And that is the team that we expected coming into the year. That's the team we're getting now. That's why they were ranked. That's why they were high up in the standings. And, they have lost a lot against the spread because they weren't good early this year. And now they're a little underrated. Not now that they're favored and have gone on this winning streak. But I think they're better than Baylor. So let's go and lay the 1.5 there. Let's go to Farmageddon. We're going to back the other team in Kansas as well. Kansas State at Iowa State. We're getting 2.5 points here. And this one is really about the matchup. It's about, again, kind of like the South Carolina and Clemson game. It's just that Kansas State is playing well. Iowa State is not playing well. And it's the running that Kansas State does is my big fear for Iowa State. They've let up a lot of rushing yards recently. 354 to UCF in that game they should have lost. 237 to Kansas, and they did lose. 237 to Cincy. They ended up winning that game. K-State is 16th in rushing yards per game. DJ Giddens is such a good back. Avery Johnson runs as well. I just don't think that Iowa State matches up really well here. K-State's been bad on the road, and I know that's been used against them, but the game that they won on the road was against Colorado, who I still think is a better team than them. So they can blow up. They can play well. I think those issues are a little bit behind them, the road issues. So I'm going to take K-State plus the 2.5 or on the money line. The last one we're going to do for the picks is Houston at BYU. We're going to go under 41.5. Only one game for Houston has gone over this total all year. They've only had one over the whole year. 8 of 11 games they played have gone under this total. Houston has a really strong defense and a really bad offense. We've seen BYU. They put up 23 points last week against a weak Arizona State team. Arizona State pass defense, I should say. Arizona State's a very good team. They're not a weak team. But their defense should not have held BYU to only 23 points. Point is, Houston plays strong defense. BYU's offense is not clicking right now. Utah has scored 23 or fewer points in 3 straight games. I do think they win this game, but I think this game is like 31-3 or 24-10 or something like that. I don't think that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I think BYU gets 2 scores and leans on it. They run the ball a lot. They know that Zion Chris and this Houston offense is probably not going to play very well because they haven't all year. And I think if they get up big, they're just going to run the ball, control the clock, and bleed it out. So I think that because they got a shot at the Big 12 title game, they're not going to mess around. They're not going to put the ball up for grabs and let this Houston defense back into the game or this Houston offense back into the game. So I think this one is tight and low scoring, a boring game, and we're going to take the under 41.5. If you are looking to up your game in sports betting, join our exclusive sports betting Discord community at bettingpros.com/chat. Not only can you connect with expert handicappers who provide free picks for the NBA, NFL, MLB, college sports, player props, live betting, and more, but now you can also participate in our weekly community picks, cast your vote, see how your picks stack up against the experts, and track your success. Let's go to the props. We're going to start with touchdowns. I'm just going to hit this one again. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back, first touchdown in the game. It's plus 150. I really like this. I'm just going to take another shot at it. Homie has 27 touchdowns this year, right? So I think he can absolutely do this. So it's against Oregon State. He just, it's difficult, real quick in this game, but it's the only time you can get Jeanty and a touchdown at plus money. It's plus 150, and that's why I like it. I only have one other touchdown prop. We're going to go to the South Carolina game and go to LaNorris Sellers, the South Carolina quarterback, plus 135. He has 5 rushing touchdowns this year. He has at least 13 carries in 9 of 11 games so far this season. So he is a threat to run in and get a score near the goal line. So I think Clemson is going to concentrate on stopping Raheim Sanders at the goal line. I don't know that they'll be successful in stopping him at all. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think Sellers can easily score one. He is a running quarterback for sure. Let's go to the passing props. I'm going to go back to the Egg Bowl. I just think this 300.5 yards against Mississippi State is too low. He's hit this in 7 games this season, 4 of 6 home games. They're at home. And Georgia and Kentucky are the only 2 teams that he missed this in that home schedule. Mississippi State is 113th against the pass. They only have 8 sacks this year. They don't put pressure on the quarterback. Now, again, in a rivalry game, maybe that changes. Maybe we see a little bit more of an inspired defense playing from Mississippi State. I don't think it matters. I think Jaxson Dart is going to pass for this total in any situation. Mississippi State, 122nd in 10-plus yards. 10-plus yard passing plays allowed this season. So they're just not a very good defense. The offense keeps them in games. They can slow it down a little bit, but the defense is really bad. It's what has made them bad this entire season. All right, we're going to go to Max Brosmer, the quarterback from Minnesota, and I'm going to tell you before I give you this prop, check the weather, right? I got screwed over by that monsoon that they had in San Jose State with my Nick Nash pick last week because they said rain. They didn't say monsoon. And then there was a huge monsoon at the end of that game. It was kind of crazy. But Max Brosmer, the total is 202.5 yards at Wisconsin. Again, check the weather. But Wisconsin has played well against the pass, but not against good passing teams. The teams that they've held under this total of 202.5 yards are below 100 passing offenses, like Northwestern, Rutgers, Purdue, Western Michigan. Those are the teams. Every other team that they've played has gone over 202.5 passing yards. And Max Brosmer himself has passed this in 6 of 11 games, 3 of his last 4. Minnesota has a top 25 passing percentage in their offense at 54.3%. And only 16 sacks on the season for Wisconsin is very strange for a usually good defensive team. That's 115th in the nation. So they're not really putting pressure on the quarterback as well, which is good for Max Brosmer. And he has 2 legit offensive tackles that could go in the NFL draft. So I think just with good protection and time to throw, Brosmer is going to pass this one pretty easy as long as the weather cooperates. Again, let's check that weather. Let's make sure we don't get screwed by that. Kyle McCord, the Syracuse quarterback, we're going to go over 1.5 passing touchdowns versus Miami. I don't typically like touchdown calls for quarterbacks because it's just, you get down to the 1, they can hand it to LaQuint Allen and go. But they're going to have to score to keep pace with Miami in this game. He has hit this in 9 of 11 games this year. Pitt and Cal are the only teams that have held him below 2 touchdowns. Syracuse is second in passing this season. And I know for those of you that saw the Pitt game and saw Kyle McCord, and a lot of Ohio State fans don't think he's good either. He's okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's great. I think he could be, my buddy CK keeps getting on me about this dude could be a top 100 or 150 pick in the NFL draft because quarterback is weak. We'll see there. But since that Pitt disaster where he threw 3 pick sixes, he's been pretty good. He had 24 of 35, 280 yards and 2 touchdowns for Spa Tech, 382 yards and 2 touchdowns against Boston College, 323 yards, only 1 touchdown in that Cal game, but 470 and 3 versus UConn last week. So we have seen Kyle McCord kind of been peaking recently. So we're going to go ahead and go over 1.5 passing touchdowns versus the Hurricanes, who have just let teams score. I've got 2 rushing props for you and then the 3 receiving. The 2 rushing props, we're going to go back to the Palmetto Bowl and go Raheim Sanders, South Carolina running back, over 73.5 rushing yards. He's hit this in 6 of 11 games, 3 of his last 4. And Clemson is just 55th against the rush. They're allowing 139.4 yards per game. Now, Sellers is going to be part of those yards as well. We already talked about him potentially scoring a touchdown. But look at some of these lead backs, man. I mean, Isaac Brown, 20 carries, 151 yards and a score. Micah Ford for Stanford, 15 for 122. Kendrick Raphael for NC State, 10 for 84. 7 for 80 for Anderson Castle from App State. Nate Frazier in that opening week had 11 carries for 83 yards. Wake Forest running back Demon Claiborne and Citadel running back Garrison Johnson are the only 2 guys that have had 15 touches and 15 carries and not passed this rushing total. Sanders has had 15-plus carries in 5 straight games. So I think this one is very, very doable. I'm going to go to my Texas boy, Quintrevion Wisner, the Texas running back, over 75.5 rushing yards against Texas A&M. He's hit this in 4 games this season and 4 of the last 6. He's had 10-plus carries. Last week, he had 26 carries for 158 yards and a touchdown against Kentucky. Jarquez Hunter for Auburn last week against Texas A&M had 28 carries for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he's going to get a decent amount of carries because Quinn Ewers is playing at less than 100% as well. The offensive line is one of the best in the country for Texas as well. So I think 75.5 is just too low a number to not go over on that one. The 3 receiving props, actually it's really 4 receiving props because I have 2 for Jeremiah Smith here. 76.5 receiving yards, and we're going to go over 30.5 as his longest reception versus Michigan. He's hit the yardage in 7 of 11 games and also hit the longest in 7 of 11 games. Michigan, 72nd in passing yards allowed, so not very good for a strong Michigan defense. They're just not the same team that they were last year. Michigan has allowed 30-plus completions to 30-plus long completions to everyone but Michigan State. 2 guys had 30, but nobody had over 30. And Illinois, Arkansas State, and Fresno State. So I think Jeremiah Smith, as long as he gets like 4 catches in this game, one of these is going to be a long one. And the total is just 76.5 is way too low. If he gets 1 big catch, he's going over that for sure. Cam Coleman, the Auburn wide receiver against Bama, we're going to go over 47.5. And this is just a true freshman getting way more involved recently. He's had 9 targets in each of the last 2 games. He led the Tigers in targets in both those games against A&M last week. 9 targets, 7 catches, 128 yards, and 2 scores. 9 for 8 on 100 with 3 scores versus ULM. He's 16th of 244 wide receivers with at least 45 targets in the country in ADOT, 16.4 yards per target. So if he gets 3 catches in this game, he's going over this total. So with 9 targets per game and just him getting more involved and Peyton Thorne really working with him and the weakness of the defense, we saw it against Vandy, being this Alabama secondary, I think he could easily get that. And I'm going to go with one of my favorites, Elic Ayomanor, the Stanford wide receiver, over 62.5 receiving yards at San Jose State. He's passed this in 5 games, 3 of the last 4. San Jose State is 89th in passing yards allowed. They grade 58th in coverage, but they're only 105th in pass rush. And let's just take a look at this season and number 1 wide receivers against San Jose State. Ricky White last week for UNLV, 7 for 98. Boise State, Cam Camper, 6 for 92. Trent Walker for Oregon State, 11 for 151. Mac Delana, John Michael Gillenberg, Torrey Hunter, and Amari Winfield. Cortez Bram for Nevada and Jaden Smith went over this. 3 guys for Washington State went over this. And Sacramento State, their FCS opponent, Anderson Grover, went over. He had 64 yards. So 62.5 is just way too low of a number, especially for the way that Stanford's offense has been playing recently. So that is it for me. Remember, you can follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. We'll be back for some conference championship picks and props for you as well. So I will see you guys then. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Take it easy, everybody.